May I request Dr. Shreyashi Dasgupta, resident in Clinical Pharmacology, School of Tropical Medicine, Kolkata, to deliver her topic on treatment adherence and patient safety. Over to you, Dr. Dasgupta.
Thank you, Shatavisha. Before I start, may I confirm whether I'm audible as well as whether my slides are visible? Thank you so much. So, okay. So, very good evening to all my respected teachers and the delegates who are attending this evening. So, as we reach the fag end of this enriching week-long experience, the final topic of discussion today is the treatment adherence and patient safety. So I shall try to wrap it up as early as possible. So coming to adherence, when we talk of treatment, we automatically assume that there will be, or we expect outcomes to occur. But what we tend to overlook is that between treatment and outcome, there is another vital parameter which can modify outcomes, and that is adherence. So good adherence or a lack thereof may lead to may be the deciding factor between positive as well as negative outcomes. So how do we define adherence? So WHO defines, that is the World Health Organization, defines adherence as the extent to which a person's behavior, and by behavior they mean taking medication, following a diet, and or executing lifestyle changes, corresponds with agreed recommendations from a healthcare provider. Now this definition has some very key words here. The first thing which I would highlight is that it does not refer only to medication. It refers to therapy as a comprehensive, in a comprehensive manner. That is not only medication, but any treatment behavioral aspects or any pharmacological as well as non-pharmacological advice which might be incorporated into the therapeutic regime. And adherence is also defined here. The emphasis is on a patient-centric approach. It is not a passive deliberation or a passive prescription. It is a prescription which is based on a discussion with the patient regarding what would be convenient for him or her. So here we come to an important difference between compliance and adherence. So adherence, it is a dynamic, it depends on a dynamic communication between the patient as well as the healthcare provider, whereas compliance, it requires a passive agreement on the part of the patient to the recommendations given by the physician. So what's a good adherence? So ideally, the degree of adherence should be above 95%, but an adherence of more than 80% is also generally considered as acceptable. Now coming to the spectrum of adherence, the whole spectrum ranges from non-adherence and moving on from non-adherence to initial non-adherence, partial non-adherence, persistence to adherence in total. Now, each of these parts in the spectrum may occur separately. It is not a continuum, but any of the patient might even present initially with full adherence to the protocol and might later relapse and become a non-adherent person if he or she faces any issues, which we will discuss later on. Now, what is the magnitude of non-adherence? Why are we discussing about adherence? Why is it so important? So non-adherence has been seen that patients who are suffering from chronic diseases tend to be non-adherent to their therapy in almost 50% of the cases. In studies which have taken place in China, Gambia, and the Seychelles, it has been found that around 43% in Gambia, 27% in Seychelles, 26% of the patients were non-adherent to their antihypertensive medication regime. I have found references of only 2 studies in India, both of which had taken place in South India. One was in relation to the ART, that is antiretroviral therapy, in which 50% of the patients were found to be non-adherent. They had taken the adherence measure to be less than 95% in the case of this study. Whereas in another study by Gopi et al., where they had looked into non-adherence in anti-tubercular therapy, the non-adherence ranged from 20% to 57%. What is interesting in this study is that the people in which, that is the 20% around the subjects or the patients in whom non-adherence was found to be low, where those subjects who were either facing loss of wages due to their disease, or who had already been who had already been treatment failures and had taken anti-tubercular therapy on a second or a third occasion. So as we see in this graph out here, so here is you see just okay. So here you see this graph depicts how adherence measures change in case of certain chronic diseases over time. So here the orange, it depicts cholesterol, that is hypercholesterolemia. This depicts the yellow line depicts how the adherence changes over time in case of diabetes. The green line shows us how it changes in cases of obesity, where it falls drastically after around around 4 months. Then this is depression, where we see almost a linear fall in adherence. So as you've seen, most of the chronic cases over time, the patients tend to become non-adherent to therapy. Now, what are the consequences of non-adherence on patient safety? So if you look at the data from the United States, so we see that medication non-adherence can cost from anywhere from around $100 billion to $300 billion per year. And it accounts for 50% of treatment failure each year. And it also accounts for almost 1,25,000 preventable deaths per year. So this is a huge number which can be prevented if we try to make our patients more adherent to our therapy. 33 to 69% of hospital admissions were found to be due to non-adherence. And in a study where they looked at the mortality rates in diabetes and heart disease patients, they found that those who are non-adherers, they had a much higher mortality rate, a rate of around 12.1% when compared to adherers in whom the rate was around 6 to 7%. So this is an idea that good adherence can reduce adverse events, and it can change the mortality pattern in the subjects who are suffering from chronic disease. If you look at this diagram here, this shows us a Kaplan-Meier curve. Here you see on the y-axis, you have the cumulative incidence, and on the x-axis, we have the time in months. So this shows us the proportion of days where adherence was maintained. So you see here, when the adherence is more than 80%, which is represented by this line here, then the mortality of the risk of having a major cardiac adverse event is less as compared to its subjects in whom the adherence is less than 40%. So those who have a lower adherence have a greater risk of suffering from a major adverse cardiac event. So this is another result from a study where they had looked at medication non-adherence as a cause of hospital admissions. So here again, if we see less than 75% non-adherence, hospital stay per episode ranged from 15 to 15 days almost. And in those who were more than 75% moderately non-adherent, it was around 11.4. And the cost of hospitalization also was more when the percentage of non-adherence was more. So this is another data from the US where we see this x-axis shows adherence from 1 to 19%, and the highest is 80 to 100%. And on the y-axis here, we have the hospitalization risk. So we are looking at diseases here, all are chronic diseases. So as with increased adherence, the risk of hospitalization is also low. And in all the parameters, when it is less than 80%, when adherence is less than 80%, the risk of hospitalization in all of these diseases is considerably higher, and it is statistically significant also. So now, why does non-adherence occur? What are the barriers to treatment adherence? So there can be a variety of factors which affect adherence. They may be socio-economic factors, where maybe the cost factors or poverty, transportation challenges, transportation to the healthcare system, delivery place, or maybe to the pharmacy, etc., in relation to our country, cultural beliefs, etc. Patient-related factors like forgetfulness, physical impairments, where they might find difficulty in maybe tearing open the packaging of the medicines, forgetfulness in cases of the elderly, their inability to get access to pharmacies if they are elderly living alone who do not have people to rely on, who do not have appropriate social support, low literacy, etc. Next are the therapy-related factors, like in case of complex therapy regime, where they have to take different medications at different times of the day with frequent changes in medication regime or long duration of treatment where they tend to become complacent. So these can be therapy-related factors. Condition-related factors, again, are related to the level of disability, rate of progression or severity of the disease, etc. And in some cases, the barriers may also be healthcare-related or system-related, like where the healthcare workers are overworked, where they do not have ample time or they do not have proper communication skills to communicate to the patient regarding the benefits of the medication, where they have not been, they did not get the time to instruct the patients properly. So these are the kind of situations in which there can be a risk of non-adherence. Now, in some cases, we may be able to predict the patients in whom we may face non-adherence. So what are those kind of situations where they have low literacy? This is not necessarily a limitation in English language. This can be the limitation in the particular vernacular, maybe a person who is, if we talk in the context of West Bengal, somebody who is outside of this state and who is not able to converse in Bengali, and maybe we have given the instructions in Bengali because we did not elicit the history of the patient properly. So in those cases also, because of the communication gap, there might be non-adherence. If the subject is suffering from depression, psychiatric disease, substance abuse, lower cognitive function or cognitive impairment, if the person does not have an insight into the illness that he or she is suffering from, if the person does not have belief in the treatment, in the benefit of the treatment, if the medication regime is too complex for the person, if he or she has any inconvenience in taking the medications, a fear of side effects which might occur from the medication, cost, barriers to access, all of these may be predictors of non-adherence. Now, how do we measure non-adherence? How will we know whether the patient is adherent or non-adherent to therapy? So there can be both direct as well as indirect ways in which we might assess adherence. So directly is by direct observation, as by direct observation, as in the case of DOTS, which was taken up for the therapy, anti-tubercular therapy, or by measurement of biological markers. This can also, for example, if we are treating somebody for any patient of diabetes, if we look at the plasma glucose values and they are decreasing in a consistent manner, then we might be able to know that the patient is adherent to the therapy. Now, what are the indirect ways of measuring adherence? Behavior or physiological markers assessment, self-reporting. We can directly ask the patient or the patient's family members, and we can count the number of pills which have been taken from the particular strip by conducting interviews with the help of patient diaries. And there are certain scales also which give us an a subjective measure of the adherence. By secondary data, that is refill data, claims data, etc. By other parameters like the medication possession ratio, proportion days covered, etc. And mainly by electronic monitoring, which is now becoming the gold standard of adherence assessment, which is by bring your own device-based self-monitoring devices. With the emergence of smartphone-based apps now and e-pills, etc., we can now have an insight into how the patient is managing his therapeutic regime. Now, what are the strategies that a physician can undertake to improve adherence? So it is a simple strategy which consists of simplifying the regimen, impart knowledge, modify patient beliefs and human behavior, provide communication and trust, leave the bias, and evaluate adherence. So these are just a few examples of how this can be undertaken. So simplifying the regimen by letting the patient decide if cost or convenience would be more important to him or her. For example, if a person needs 2 different medications, so a physician can directly inform the patient of the condition and then can offer whether the patient would like to have one pill, decide whether I can prescribe 2 different pills or one pill that is a combination product. The combination product will most likely cost more. Which option would best suit your needs? So as per the needs, as per the convenience of the patient, the therapy can be tailored. Match pill taking to activities of daily living. In order for this medication to work effectively, you will need to take this medication twice a day. Can you take it at breakfast and dinner to help you remember, or is there a more convenient time? So by communicating better with the patient and by knowing his or her preferences, we can prepare a regimen which patient would be more likely to stick to. By imparting knowledge involving the family members. For example, it can sometimes be difficult to remember to take all of your medications. Is it possible to ask your wife to help you remember to take this medication? By addressing the cost, by allowing the patient to repeat back instructions, whatever instructions have been given regarding the time or manner of taking the medication, to ask the patient to repeat back to us to confirm whether the patient has understood us properly, reinforce verbal instructions with written information, and provide an access for questions. In case the patient comes back with any queries, the patient should know where and who the person can reach out to. Modifying beliefs, ensuring that the patients know their risks, what will happen if they stop taking their medication, whether the patient is aware of it, and what are the beliefs of the particular patient regarding that. Identifying perceived barriers. Do you have any fears or concerns about the medication that I have prescribed? So by knowing all of these, we can improve the adherence. Providing communication, giving feedback to the patient regarding whatever the patient has told us. Furthering the dialogue, getting to know more about his condition or what are the problems that the person is facing. Watch for patient acceptance and involve the patient in decision making. Leaving the bias. Relate to the patient's demographic. The patient is somebody who has come from outside your state or outside your place. Maybe it will be possible, if it is possible, to talk to the person in the language that that person is more comfortable in, to give him an option whether he would like to converse in Bengali, whether he is more comfortable in Hindi, or maybe some other language. And if you are able to converse in that language, it is better to talk to that patient in that particular language. Take extra time to overcome cultural barriers. And next is evaluating adherence by asking direct questions and try and recognize any lack of receptivity and identify the barriers and try to address them. So how do we overcome non-adherence? For unintentional non-adherence, there are certain packaging interventions which are cost-effective first steps. For example, the pill box, in which you can put in there are demarcated, like you see in this picture, there are separate compartments for each day of the week, and you can then put in the tablets or the medications for each day into each of these boxes so that the person does not forget to take it. Then integrating the medication taking into existing habits by external reminders, phone alarms, or medication logs. There are certain newer approaches to improving adherence. For example, the pharmacy incentive programs. So these are a set of web or text-based programs which encourage the patient to engage and give their feedbacks and interact more with the apps, and then you get that information from there to see whether the patient is being adherent to the regimen or not. In-home telemonitoring by remotely monitoring the patient's adherence to the regimen. This is more helpful in case of high-risk patients. Innovative medication packaging as offered by PillPack, which is designed to help patients manage multiple medications. So they have a convenient packaging, and in case of PillPack, what they do is that the prescribers send the prescription directly to PillPack, and then they send it back, send it to the patients according to the way in which they require. Say, for example, if they have for a particular week, they will send their medications as and when required, and that is how they monitor adherence. Then there are mobile apps that periodically remind the patients to take their medications, and they also help in connecting the patients and pharmacists so that you have a collaborative effect. And if the patient fails to take any medication, then it also has a system by which they can notify the patient's family or friends if such an incident occurs. Now, nowadays, there are also certain smart bottle caps and smart pills which have sensors incorporated in them, which can track the ingestion and send a signal to a patch so that the adherence can be tracked when the patient takes the pill or when the person opens the cap of that bottle. There are also certain interactive gamification solutions, that is games, which which reward the patients if they engage in health activities. So these are newer approaches which can help adherence. So to summarize, medication taking behavior is an extremely complex and it is a highly individualized process. So it requires multifactorial strategies because the behavior of a person, of an individual is influenced not only by his perceptions, but those of the family around him, of the community in which he lives, of the healthcare system in which the person is has access to. So all of these have an effect on, or they can influence how the person responds to the therapy that is advised. And improved treatment adherence can directly translate to improved patient outcomes and reduced economic costs. But we have very less data regarding adherence, especially in developing countries. And adherence data is especially lacking in certain subgroups, for example, in adolescents, in children, and in marginal populations. So this is the need of the hour to develop such kind of information so that we can then think of strategies to minimize non-adherence. And this is just an observation that billions of dollars are spent on developing new drugs, and maybe applying a fraction of that cost to helping patients adherent to their medications would actually have a more significant impact on the healthcare system and the health of the population as a whole. So these are my references. So I would like to conclude by saying that the most expensive pill is that which is not taken or which is taken inappropriately.
Thank you, Dr. Dasgupta. We now invite comments on further discussion on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, it was really an excellent presentation, very exhaustive, and we have also opened up some newer areas, thought-provoking, and not necessarily all of them have been actually tried in this country, but then there is a even more requirement for finding technology solutions in order to improve adherence, and it is really well accepted that yes, insufficient adherence or suboptimal adherence can also lead to safety concerns, and we should be conscious about that. All the healthcare providers should be conscious about that, and we should also educate our patients how and to what extent adherence is important. And you are very right when you mentioned, when you talk about adherence, it's not just taking the medicines, but all kind of advice that the doctor otherwise is providing through prescription or by oral advices. So it was a long week for us, very busy week for all of us, and I would request Dr. Partha Ray to have a brief comment, and then I would request Professor Dr. D.D. Gupta, who is the head of pharmacology at Shimla Medical College. We are fortunate to have him. In fact, I find Dr. D.D. Gupta, Professor D.D. Gupta, a good friend of ours, who has been a very avid listener and participant in all these 7 days. So I requested Professor Gupta to say a couple of words at the end, but before that,
I will wait.
I request Dr.
I will wait. I will
wait. Professor Ray, I have asked Professor Gupta to say concluding remarks.
Okay,
so
okay, I see.
You can please go ahead.
Okay, well, I must congratulate Dr. Das Gupta for really illuminating us on very important aspect of drug adherence. Doctor, the main problem is how do we measure it? I saw your flow chart. There is no foolproof measure of measuring adherence. That was one question. So we need a more practical Indian context adherence measuring tool. I think the two solutions which you put at the very bottom was the understanding of the need for taking the drug. At the, you had a slide where the last 2 points were the most important. I was just wondering whether the pharmacists, and we have a large number of pharmacists in the country, are we utilizing their resources enough? Because it can't be, because the doctor is making the history, the examination, the diagnosis, the investigations, the prescription. Can you see 5 things we doctors are doing? We need to diversify. We can't really hold all the ropes of the chariot. Some other person who is on the area, the pharmacist, like I said about linezolid being recommended to me among 4 other, daptomycin, vancomycin, and flucloxacillin, which is what I wanted, by a pharmacist. So can they participate in this process? Because there's plenty of them, and I've seen any shop, there is 4 or 5 people looking at the prescription from the other end of the tail. So if few of them are, I'm sure, pharmacologically qualified, they're just not pushing a particular brand. So we should rope all the people we have on the pharmacy area to counsel patients on these aspects, trained ones. That was one question from a logistic and a futuristic note. And do you have any concepts about the obesity patients dropping down precipitously after 3 months compared to the others which were having a linear fall and others not too much? The cholesterol ones were the most compliant, it seemed. I don't know about that. And the last fourth point I wish to make is cost versus convenience. Anybody will go for cost in the whole world. And in America, a lot of non-compliance, non-adherence is because of cost issues. People actually, reduce their insulin dose just to save the money. This is horribly expensive, America. We are very fortunate in India to have very cheap medicines. So that's the 3 or 4 things I made comments about. The questions to Dr. Gupta. I'll keep quiet in the interest of time. I'll let you answer the questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your questions. So, sir, regarding the measurement for adherence, there are certain tools and the scales and there is the Morisky medication adherence scale. We have the MAC, that is the medication adherence questionnaire. So there are certain, these are all validated questionnaires, sir, which are accepted worldwide as a measure of adherence, and these are more commonly used as a part of research. I do not know whether these are actually being used in case of, in the clinics for assessing adherence, but these are routinely used when we are talking of research regarding medication adherence. That was the first question, sir. The second question, as you have very rightly pointed out, about involving the pharmacists in dispensing or in educating the patients regarding the treatments or the medications that have been prescribed. I believe, sir, this is a combined effort. Both the pharmacists can contribute hugely to this, but some amount of dialogue should also occur between the clinician as well as the patient. So the contribution of both should be there. The third question regarding the fall as was observed in case of obesity, I believe, sir, in most of the cases with the existing drugs for obesity, there is a lot of adverse effects that the patients encounter. Also, there may be a lack of visible results, as well as in case of obesity, it is not only about the medication adherence alone. We are talking here about adherence to every aspect of therapy. So in case of obesity, this is about medication, about lifestyle changes, dietary changes, even physical activity. I believe adhering to those becomes more of a problem in case of people who are obese, because there are other associated abnormalities, difficulties also when we are trying to follow one particular protocol. And the fourth, about cost versus compliance. Obviously, sir, for most patients, cost is a factor which will greatly affect how compliant they are to the therapy. But paradoxically, maybe some cases there is, especially in maybe people who I have encountered in India, there is a perception here that the higher the cost of the medication, the more effective it is. So, that may be contradictory. Act contradictory in some cases. But in most of the cases, yes, sir. So in most of the cases, I believe cost is a factor which will influence how adherent the person is to the therapy.
Yes. Well, thank you for remembering my questions and for taking time to answer them in sequence.
Yes, sir. Honored to be with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would rather say that regarding the cost, particularly in Indian context, very, very important. And this is the last issue that I've discussed about cost and compliance or cost and adherence. Then when they come back, and if there is a lack of response about non-adherence or in the patient whether the honest, but then building rapport with the patient, okay, that can I think do wonders. And many a time the will not lie. If he is not taking, then the patient will confide that yes, how to measure. The second that you have mentioned about that pharmacist, unfortunately in India, of course we have really in hospital environment, okay. So although there is a curriculum called clinical pharmacy, okay, but then how and to what extent there is clinical immersion, that's anybody's guess. Even in the current curriculum of the when they have clubbed it, okay, graduation and post graduation together, okay, they call it PharmD. Even there is a lot of, at least in the curriculum, there is a clinical pharmacy component. Unfortunately, most of our hospital pharmacists, yes, they could have been actually trained, okay, during their stay in the hospital, but nobody has taken any serious attempt towards that, and they are mostly put into the medicine store and maybe only in the dispensing counter. Even they hardly have any say in decision making about procurement, which medicine is to be procured, how much, and how they are to be stored. So they are also there is no serious attempt to make their capacity building in this area. In fact, from my experience, I can say in the Department of Clinical Pharmacology, knowing fully well that the number of trained clinical pharmacologists, the output is very, very low. So we wanted to actually create a team where possibly the pharmacists, clinical pharmacists should also be an important member in the team who can help in a hospital environment, as you have rightly pointed out. And we had actually approached the health university, but then all health universities, they are a little shy of conferring any kind of certificates or degrees or diploma to non-medical people, okay, quote unquote non-medical people. People do not have medical background. The health universities are feeling shy that the Medical Council of India might have a issue here. I even approached a engineering university, okay, they were eager, but then again I failed in getting this. I volunteered that we'll be having certificate program of 6 months, we'll educate them, train them, building will be done, and then these people every 6 months in a small way from my hospital, School of Tropical Medicine, I wanted to have 10 people, 12 people, 15 people every 6 months to be trained, and they could find their place in the hospital itself. So, but then I think people will learn in a dearer way, maybe in another 5 years or 10 years time. Okay, let's see what happens.
The point is, pharmacy colleagues are still clinical colleagues. That is a basic point. If our national medical council don't understand that, it's a failure on the part of the doctors to say that our pharmacy colleagues are just as clinical. In fact, after taking the history examination, doing the tests, the first intervention I'm doing is a medicine as a physician, and of course surgeons do operations. So at that interface, my pharmacy colleague is my safety check, safety net, because whatever harm I can do at that point through omission, through commission, that colleague is becoming crucially important. So it is not right to call them non-clinical. If anything, they are acting as my, my decision buddy to help me charter that course. So that's one thing. So we should make that change. In fact, the whole intention of this week was to generate a white paper, which I will invite Shambhu to do, to make some recommendations for our West Bengal Health Minister. And then we can take it further with all the positive points we are making. No, that's how change happens. Let this not be an academic exercise where we all, intelligent people sit down, talk about patients, but tomorrow we go back to doing the same old habits that we've been doing for the last 40 years. There was no point in having this 7 days.
No, that's a very good idea and very good suggestion. That we'll make a white paper, and
we can look at all the. Sorry.
We'll come back to you.
Look at all the 7 recordings.
Absolutely.
Shambhu can do that, and then you can glean out suggestions.
We'll make a small team. With your guidance, we can make a
no, not my guidance. I'm just actually somebody who's making informatory things, because
right.
I have had the privilege. No, look,
Absolutely.
Let me tell you. My perspective is this: I've been outside India to look at India from the outside.
Absolutely.
I've been in a different system to see how other systems work.
Right.
I have only learned from whatever is good in them. I've learned to objectively quantify what's not so good in the system. And I find every system has got its strengths and weaknesses, and we all have got to learn from each other. India is a fantastic system in how we manage scarce resources for the greater good. Here, they are actually using a lot of resources for not as much good. And that nobody wants to hear, you see. That's another problem altogether. So we can all the health, like the American system, people dying of insulin lack, landing up with ketoacidosis because they couldn't afford the insulin, which is so expensive. And in India, insulin is 160 rupees per small ampoule of thing. So it's affordable. Anyway, I shall give way to the senior colleague.
One thing, just I want to mention, sir. First of all, thank you for your great suggestion, and we have to do something about that. I just want to address one issue that you had asked, that drastic fall of adherence in case of obesity.
Yes.
What is very important and what generally we miss while managing our obese patient is cognitive behavioral therapy. That is the most important and crucial part. Absolutely. And often we miss that, and that is one of the reasons why that fall happened and the failure to anti-obesity management occur. So that is one important point I just want to mention. And another important issue or point I want to raise here, as we are the last topic of this pharmacovigilance week is on adherence and patient safety, and this is the pharmacovigilance week. So both pharmacovigilance and this adherence has one similarity, that is both of these words is end with E, and I believe that this E has a very important role in both these words. That means empathy. We often miss how to talk with patient. Only the science is not everything. There is a immense roles of arts, and while we are treating our patient, and for that our communication skill is very important. You had uttered and you had asked about that cost issue and adherence. If we give time and educate our patient empathetically that yes, you need GLP-1 RA, one very costly drug. Obviously, the patient can, if the patient can afford that drug only, otherwise it has nothing to say. If a patient is earning, monthly earning is 10,000 rupees, and I am prescribing the Trulicity, which cost is 8,000 per month, that is not a thing. That is totally irrational. But even if a patient who is earning 2.5 lakhs per month, I am writing one medicine which has 8,000 rupees per month cost, but I am not making or not communicating well, so the patient will not take Trulicity. Again, he tried to get some cheaper things. So this is a very important point. If we give on this stress on this empathy, I think many problems will be solved. The cost issue, the adherence issue, and overall the patient safety. If we talk with our patient properly, empathetically tell, yes, this medicine can harm you. There are possibility of urinary infection with SGLT2 inhibitors, or you may have some for initial 2 weeks, 1 month, that nausea, vomiting like things with GLP-1 RA. If we educate them properly before initiating, and that will occur definitely. That safety issues happen, that side effects occur, but patient will not become non-adherent because he has a belief that yes, my doctor told me, educate me properly, and this was already told to me. So I can continue this. So this empathy is very important thing, and that is why very long back one saint, we all know, Chaitanya Dev told that Gyan bifalo premo bina. So there is a immense roles of love and empathy on top of education and everything. So this is, I think, a very important word I want to just share with all of you. Yes.
Yeah. The important thing is what you mentioned is very important, very crucial. We have all taken the Hippocratic Oath. So empathy should be inbuilt into our character and in our personality. And we train that side of our cognitive abilities through practicing medicine in medical college and further on. And we learn every day from every patient, because every patient is different in the way they absorb our personalities. For that, I asked, as my role as the National Professor of Neurology for India, IMA, I asked Ved Prakash Mishra. Professor Ved Prakash Mishra was giving a lecture on the new curriculum about the new, that Professor Tripathi was talking about the communication now being a cardinal part of the curriculum. 40 modules have been set up only in 2019 to train doctors to speak to patients in the correct way. What you and me have learned from our parents and from our society, how to deliver a bad news, like you will die or you have a motor neuron disease or you have a stage 4 cancer. We did it from our own experience, exposure, and our personality. That will be taught to students to refine their speech and communication capabilities. That's very important. That is what you said. And empathy, then we need psychometric studies before we get anybody into MBBS. And you see, that's not very possible. Ideally, with a good psychometric study, only then if that person matches it, then you can become a doctor. But in the current world, no country can afford that. We all need to get a fast trained doctor to be able to serve population. And I showed you yesterday how people are already planning to steal doctors, even in 2021, to export them to other countries. You have the data. And that's very important that this group knows that there's active poaching of new graduates. Like they poached me when I was 27 out of India. But I have used it in my own way to bring the knowledge base back. So, becoming a doctor is not easy, but we got to serve the society. So, and we can learn on the job. And if there are skill conferences like this, we can always develop the communication skills. Like Dr. Tripathi said the other day, we don't need to rote learning anymore. We don't need to remember the list of disease. We can spend more of our frontal lobe functions and temporal lobe functions on communicating with patients. And that will give more value for time, including the billions of dollars that are spent on drug development for the eventual good. Well, let me not stand. It's getting late and
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Professor Roy. Thank you, Dr.
Call me Partho. It's more
Okay.
You are several years my senior.
Okay.
And you are a good mentor. And you have a very good mentee that I said yesterday. So you can call me Partho, sir.
All right.
It's more endearing.
Thank you, Partho. So now I think the Dr. Ashok Kumar Mondal in the chat box, what I find, it is very appealing, and that may be a very good concluding remark, that we should shift our focus from advice to counseling. Yes, of course. So as doctor, we are always instructed to give good advices. So here Dr. Mondal says that shift our focus from advice to counseling. So each time we need to counsel. That's great. Thank you, Dr. Mondal. So I think we have come towards the end of this long 7-day activities. And I would now request our friend, Professor D.D. Gupta, if you are there, sir, would you please come up and unmute yourself, and also if possible, you can also open up your video. And I'll request you to briefly comment on your words, because I know that you had been present all through all these 7 days. You are a very senior person, very senior professor. in pharmacology at Shimla Medical College as Professor Head of Pharmacology. So Professor Gupta, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. I congratulate Professor S.K. Tripathi and his efficient team, including Dr. Sambhu, Dr. Rohan, Dr. Satavisa, and all other persons who really made this week wonderful on pharmacovigilance, involving Dr. Jayaprakash and Dr. Rajiv Singh and Dr. Das Gupta today on adherence. This was really a wonderful week. And I think adherence is really a very important part in therapeutics. Usually this is the most neglected part. It should get as much importance as diagnosis and treatment, because without adherence, our all efforts are wasted on diagnosis and treatment. And I think it should be given as much importance as diagnosis and treatment. And sir, I really congratulate you and your team again. This was real, and the most important thing was the time schedule. This was really very good time from 8:30 to 9:30, although all lectures were extended beyond 10, but really we enjoyed and very informative. And I hope you will continue such programs in future also. I
Thank
really
you.
congratulate you, sir, you and your efficient team.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. Thank you very much.
So nice. So,
And now, Dr. Shambho, 90 seconds, and maybe Rohan, 45 seconds to conclude. Okay, over to Dr. Shambho.
No, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, all the respected delegates who were constantly present with us throughout this 7 days pharmacovigilance week. So we are really grateful to all of you. I am really fortunate to be a part of this program under my mentor, Professor Shantanu Kumar Tripathi, sir. So it is really a wonderful experience. I am thankful to senior professors like Professor D.D. Gupta, sir, Professor Parthurai, sir, and all the other senior professors who were constantly present with us and motivate us during this long journey. And with that, I request again all of you, we will definitely have some future academic programs. So request you to be with us in next time also. May I request one of our key player in this 7 days game, that is Mr. Rohan Tripathi, the Director of InnovoCare HealthSoft Solution. Though director word is little bit bigger than his age, but yes, he is the director of all of us. That means me and some Tripathi sir also. So may I request you to say something, say some last words, and so that we can conclude.
Thank you.
Rohan, please also acknowledge Shatovisha's contribution. Shatovisha has done a wonderful job today as the moderator.
Definitely.
Yes.
And
Rohan.
also in the drug allergy panel discussion, she was
Right.
excellent in as a moderator.
Definitely. There is actually no words that will be enough for the way she skillfully managed the 2 days. That is, we are really grateful to her. I'm also really grateful to all our speakers throughout the 7 days. It would be a error on our part not to mention Professor Ray, who has been a constant support for us, who has been always there, chipping in with his words of wisdom. Always. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Always
much.
ready.
Thank you so
I have
much.
delayed lots of dinners for the family, and lots of wives have become and husbands have become very angry. I know that. My apologies to the spouses for delaying the dinners by asking random questions. And I think I need to thank our junior colleagues, the young. I wish them very well, because whatever Professor Shantanu Tripathi with Rohan and Shambhu have laid out, and Professor D.D. Gupta, has been a great occasion for learning. No shame, no blame. That has got to be the idea. Otherwise, nobody will ever learn. At the end of the day, we all entered into the profession not to make money, but to vocation, to serve our lives for our country people. We can go outside, learn a few new things, and bring it back. So, I think all this will not be in vain. We will keep learning. and we'll take it forward with our director, Rohan, telling us the next date for the conference. No, it must be a regular feature.
Definitely, sir.
And timing was very good. As Professor Gupta said, everybody after work should spare once a week every 6 months to learn, revise lots of new things. I will look at some of the recordings, which I didn't get time. Anyway, sorry, I tend to speak too much because I'm so excited to speak to you. Bangla ba Hindi mein bolne se bahut acha lagta, lekin Bangla, English is the standard language here as per the director. So we've got to speak in English, which is a foreign language actually. Because we have to speak in the patient's language.
Thank you so much, sir. It's so amazing to see your enthusiasm even after 7 days, and even after, as Dr. Gupta very pointed out very carefully, that there is not a single day where we have failed to overcross the target deadline. So I would also love to thank Dr. D.D. Gupta too, who has always been there all through the 7 days. Thank you so much, sir. It's only because of all our senior mentors like Professor Ray, like Professor Gupta, that there is these programs can go on, and all of us. I, not at all being a doctor myself, I'm an engineer, but I get so many ideas and so many things to ponder upon, even after listening to all these lectures, that it's truly amazing that we can afford to have all these. So thank you so much. Just like Professor Ray said, we will definitely come back soon with the next date. And like we have already mentioned, that we would make sure that this 7-day program is not limited to being just a 7-day program, and have some outcome of it in pen and paper. And I really hope all of you will also chip in helping us in converting that. Lastly, I would also love to mention that, as you mostly would know, we are also having monthly sessions on adherence, medicinal adherence, which this time it was clubbed with this week, Pharmacovigilance Week. And I really thank Dr. Shreyashi Dasgupta for being there for us and delivering an excellent lecture on the same, which goes on directly in path of something that I am very proud of, something we are trying to develop at the earliest. It's called MedPer. We are trying to develop a system of medicinal adherence, which infrastructurally and economically suits the Indian masses. Hopefully sooner rather than later, I can come in front of you with the same. So till then, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Hope to see you soon in less than a month's time. And with that, any Dr. Tripathi, any last words? I am well overdue my 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much.